Tonight we go behind the scenes of a play based on Mark's Gospel.
And see an artist whose painting helps street people.
We'll have an incredible story about a Philadelphia choir.
And one man's vision of the 7 last words.
Hello, I'm Monsignor Charles Minon.
And I'm Sean Hughescamp. Welcome to Reel to Reel.
We hope you have been and still are experiencing a very pleasant, happy Easter day. I, for one, Sean, have enjoyed this day and look forward to spending this whole Easter week in celebration.
Easter time is such a special time because of all the renewed life that we see around us.
Renewed life is a great experience for us, and we have so many ways of expressing it. There's art forms in music, in literature, poetry, painting, and especially there's art form in the dramatic presentations.
In fact, back in February, we had the opportunity of previewing a college production based on St. Mark's Gospel. At Allentown College, we had an opportunity to go behind the scenes to see exactly what it takes to stage a successful play.
Jesus is here.
What were you discussing among yourselves? Teacher! Teacher!
And that, I don't know, we're going to need this brace in the back. Actually, when it fell in the slot, I felt if that were
The Gospel of St. Mark.
6 inches, you probably...
What am I to do with this man you call the King of the Jews?
Live and on stage.
You are looking for Jesus of Nazareth, the one who was crucified. He has been raised up. He is not here.
Who would think of such a thing?
Okay, let's roll it here.
A group of students and teachers from Allentown College of St. Francis de Sales not only thought about it, they actually did it. It was a 2-hour dramatization of St. Mark's Gospel called Mark My Word, and it was the first time something like this had ever been done. It began here in the college's La Buddha Center for the Performing Arts, where over 50 students and teachers in the theater and dance department spent several months working, studying, and rehearsing for Mark My Word. They gave 11 performances of the production for thousands of area theater goers.
Dug out a vat and erected a tower. Then he leased it to tenant farmers and went out on a journey. In due time, he dispatched a man in his service to the tenants to obtain from them his share of the produce.
Good morning, Lisa.
Good morning, Paul.
Any messages here?
Yes,
Thank you.
The idea for this production was that of Father Gerard Schubert, chairman of the theater and dance department at the college. After hearing that British actor Alec McGowan was doing a solo performance of St. Mark's Gospel off-Broadway, Father Schubert began to wonder what a full-scale production of the Gospel would be like.
But what I did was I went scurrying to my Bible and brought out my edition of St. Mark and sat down and read it from beginning to end. And lo and behold, I was amazed. I could read the entire Gospel in about 2 hours. And I was thinking, however, this could actually be staged. And I began to think in terms of what that would look like, a stage production of the Gospel of Mark. No attempt to change anything, to bring in something from St. Matthew or Luke or John. It's pure Mark from beginning to end. The message of Mark is that Christ is the suffering servant, and that salvation comes through his redemptive act. It's not Christ as a wonder worker. It's not Christ as a social worker. It's Christ as the Redeemer.
Because he taught with authority
and not like the scribes. There entered into their synagogue a man with an unclean spirit.
What do you want with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God.
Quiet. I'm out.
Reading it is one thing, but experiencing it, the stage enables us to experience action. It's the only medium that really does that directly and immediately and forcefully and dynamically and excitingly. So whereas it's maybe reading the Gospels becomes kind of an intellectual assent is given to the words of Christ, we are getting away from his humanity and the experience of that humanity. This presentation, hopefully, will enable people to experiencing that event, the Christ event.
A production like this doesn't just fall together easily. Before opening night, so many things happen, it's often difficult to keep track of all of them. Costumes must be sewn, the set must be designed, props made, and hours upon hours of rehearsals, not to mention voice exercises. And although the teachers provide excellent direction and supervision, much of the work is done by the students.
In the areas of props, lights, wherever, there are students involved with faculty members being trained to learn the professional way of handling all the support, creative aspects of theatrical production. And you just run the gamut: sets, costumes, lights, props, sound, stage management, house management, box office management, publicity. They are involved in every aspect of the theater. Faculty members are in charge of the design work. The students are in charge of implementing the designs.
Vince Scott has several parts in Mark My Word, in addition to being set construction crew chief. Although doing both things can be exhausting, he finds it valuable.
You get much more than just an acting experience here, because you can, once you get out of here, if you work in like a rep company, you'll have a much better chance of being hired if you're able to build a set in addition to acting.
We're actually doing something we don't maybe do all the time in performing a play. We're actually praying about this every night. We're asking for the inspiration that we may do this the best we can. We have a very, very good and real and deepening sense of the value of this production over just doing any production. It's tremendous, and I'm just so happy that I have the opportunity to do this. It's something special for me.
What makes this production even more special for Father Schubert is that it gives him the opportunity to bring his two loves together. His love of God, which he lives every day as an oblate of St. Francis, and his lifelong love of the theater.
But the theater generally is a profession, and as an educator, I'm giving a professional, education in theater. Now, more or less, I get the opportunity to put them both together. Actually, I see theater, and always have seen it, as providing a kind of a religious, insofar as it's spiritual, dimension to life, and try to communicate that to students no matter what play we do, that there is a religious, spiritual content to humanizing people. And going to a play increases our sensitivity. It makes us more sympathetic. It makes us more aware of the human condition. So that is a spiritual, religious connection. Here, the connection is obvious. We are combining our talents in theater with, communicating the gospel message. So it's putting the two things totally and magnificently, kind of together.
During its brief run, Mark My Word was well received by the audience and by a critic who wrote that people should be bussed in to see the play because of the creative way that it teaches the lessons of the gospel.
There's more to come on Reel to Reel. Stay with us. Coming up, we have the fairy tale story of a Philadelphia choir and a vision of the 7 last words.
It's time to do something for your friends and for your faith. This week, the Catholic Standard and Times will go to every Catholic family in southeastern Pennsylvania with news about the needy helped by the Catholic Charities Appeal and with a special money-saving offer. Support the appeal and do yourselves a favor, too. Get a free 600-page book answering all your questions about the Catholic Church with your subscription to the Standard and Times. Call 587-3666. That's 587-3666.
Coming up in Expressions, we'll see one man's vision of the 7 last words of Christ. The artist is Dan Whiteley from Cleveland. The meditations you will hear were written by Father Bob Cluse, and the music was originally composed and played for us by a seminarian, Michael Bruin. But first, let's watch how perseverance, hard work, and a lot of luck went together to make a dream come true for a Philadelphia choir.
The idea for the trip to Avila originated last summer when I was on vacation in Spain in July, and I attended a concert by a children's choir over there. After the concert was over, I went to the director and I congratulated him on the fine job that they did, and I told him that I also am a choir director of a children's choir in the United States. He said, well, we've been looking for an American choir for a long time so that we could do an exchange program with them, a combined concert tour. But we were always concerned about the language barrier. And I told him that my children, for the most part, are bilingual because they're Puerto Rican. And that did it. That clinched the deal, and we decided to go ahead with the idea. When I first came back from Spain, after the invitation was made, I had my doubts that we could get this thing to work financially. I knew artistically we were ready for something like this. It started very slowly. The funding started very slowly. We got some media attention first from the local newspapers and then from the city newspapers. The Lower Kensington Businessmen's Association helped us. Some of the other businessmen in the area gave us donations or sponsored some of the children so that they could go. The fundraising sometimes would keep us up until 4 and 5 in the morning, trying to meet deadlines, trying to not leave a stone unturned where we might find somebody to help us, and it's been successful. It's been well worth the time. The whole idea of the program, the whole reason that we worked to make this thing possible was twofold. I'm always telling the children first and foremost that they are music ministers, and so I'm putting an emphasis on the Holy Week services that we will be singing for in Avila, and then secondary, it will be cultural, because it is an exchange program. Children love the choir. It's probably the best liked extracurricular activity in the neighborhood. A lot of children tell me that it's their life, it's the thing that they look forward to, it's the thing that makes school fun. And a lot of them are already anticipating how they're going to be lost without it once they graduate from the school. Yeah, this thing was a dream at the beginning, and it started purely on faith, because when I made the plane reservations, which would be upwards of $15,000 to $20,000, we had about $300 in the bank. And there were a lot of chuckles and people saying, do you really think you're going to make it? But we just had this faith all the way through that we just knew that we would make it, and I knew that the people that were working with me would make sure that that dream came true, and it did.
Jesus shared parables about sons who came to their senses, or said no first and later had a change of heart. But there were also stories about banquets and invited guests who said yes and would not come, and tales of talents that were buried. Is there still time for sons and daughters to come to their senses? there is still time to come because we are invited. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Eternal life knows only a beginning. Eternal love can have no limit. The Word was made flesh for flesh, so that no flesh would die hopeless. Jesus knows where we belong. He comes to gather so that we will know too. And all the while, the Father waits. Today, thou shalt be with me in paradise. To whom do all the people everywhere belong, if not to each other? Woman, behold thy son. Son, thy mother. When the tongue is one with roof of mouth, or the roof lets rain inside, when the throat's too dry to swallow, or you have to swallow pride, when a kingdom can't produce a drink or a meal fit for a king, when your thirst is for a lasting cup, and you just can't do a thing, you thirst. I thirst. There is one truth that I shall never forfeit. The truth was there before my awareness. It is all I need to know. It has put flesh on my bones, silence in my mouth, and confidence in my stride. I need never stand alone. I am loved. My God, why hast thou forsaken me? When was it begun? What power set it in motion? If it was born in love, can it die in darkness? Or is this a new beginning? Is this the last beginning? Exhausted Jesus, you have no more to give. It was all for the Father, all for us. Storyteller, you have given us your word. It is fixed in glass and in our hearts forever. It is finished. Last words are measured words, not wasteful. Last words say what the body can say no longer. Your last words knew your Father's hands. There was no place else to go. Into thy hands I commend my spirit. So be it.
In our next story, we meet a Baltimore artist who has found an unusual way of combining two interests, expressing himself through his art and helping the homeless of that city.
Baltimore, Maryland, Charm City, a glowing example of urban renewal of a city that is undergoing a renaissance. Baltimore is a city that is making a name for itself as a cultural and entertainment center with facilities like the Inner Harbor, Mars Mechanic Theater, and some of the best restaurants on the East Coast.
We're open all the time. They come here because they like us too, I think. They sense that hospitality is very important here, and that besides a meal, they also are greeted and, in a sense, taken care of.
Sister Josanna Abramitis runs one of the most popular lunchrooms in the city, serving sometimes as many as 600 in one day. But her establishment isn't listed in the restaurant guide. Our Daily Bread is just one of the city's soup kitchens that serves Baltimoreans who haven't benefited from the city's prosperity. There are approximately 11,000 homeless people living on the streets of Baltimore. 11,000 people who have no place to call home, no warm, secure place to go at night.
I'm on the street in kind of Social Security. They owe me $2,700 and $2,500, and I can't get a hold of them. I got to go to the soup kitchens to eat, and I have to sleep in the mission. I could be home and set myself up in a nice apartment and everything, and here I am on the street.
Sister Josanna knows that these people are faced with a great deal of certainty and uncertainty in their lives.
It is certain that they will probably follow the same pattern of going from the mission or sleeping in an underground parking lot to wandering the streets during the day, to trying to find a place where they can get a drink of water or use the restrooms or get a meal. And the uncertainty is, well, where am I going to sleep tonight?
I didn't feel any compassion for these people. I felt they're there because they have a drinking problem, you know, or they don't want to work or whatever, and really never gave it much thought. That was enough for me because I had put them in their place, so I knew where they were. And I'd really
Dave Curtis works downtown, and like many city workers, had managed to ignore the bag ladies and panhandlers who are part of the urban landscape. It was not until one winter evening about 2 years ago that Dave had any reason to question his opinion of these people.
During Lent, I would attend daily Mass at the Basilica. This is when I first came across in a personal contact sort of way with any of these guys. And one used to stand in front of the Basilica and he would collect his quarters and his dimes or whatever. But the thing that amazed me about him as time went on, the weather was terrible. And I started to stop and say a few words to him. He never complained. He was always okay. And so I became very curious about him.
Dave is an artist. He works for a large Baltimore advertising agency as an art director. When his curiosity about a man known as Jim was aroused, it seemed natural that he would turn to his talent as a tool to explore a lifestyle he didn't understand.
From an artist standpoint, he was an interesting subject. And so I began doing illustrations just of him, and then it led to a couple other guys. It was like a subject that I had to keep drawing. I hadn't felt that I had completed it yet.
When he began the project, he did it slowly, getting to know his subjects, talking to them, asking their permission to be photographed.
I did not want to stand off at a distance and just take pictures of these people. And had I done that, I think I would have, of course, I would never have ended up with the kind of pictures that I did, with, I think, a feeling of a little bit of dignity.
Dave knew from first-hand experience that these homeless men depend on the missions of the city. He had the idea of putting together a folio of limited edition art prints to be used to raise money for the missions.
The folio offers someone a chance. If they can't afford original art, it's a limited number of prints, and the plates, it'll never be printed again. Okay, and that gives it value. And it allows them to have a reasonably well reproduced piece of art from the original, and to help these people out, which are the subject of the art.
But Dave was faced with a problem, the printing. He wasn't sure where he could find someone willing to do the high-quality printing that is necessary for limited edition prints, a process that is very expensive. Then he met John Brown of Agnahotra Press.
I had a salesman who knew Dave Curtis, and he had seen these illustrations that David had done, and David had had an idea to print them and sell the prints and have the proceeds go to, I think, the soup kitchen or something like that, for the benefit of these street souls.
And John, didn't take him long, matter of minutes, he looked at the art, and I believe his exact words was, "I would be honored to do these, which kind of took me back a little.
And I was so impressed with his artwork and his loving gesture that I thought we would get involved. I didn't realize the technical problems that we'd get into when we started, but I thought that David was such a good person, I'd want to try to help him out.
Agnihotra Press printed 900 sets of the 4 full-color illustrations that comprise the Street Souls folio. Dave asks for a $100 donation for each set. To ensure that every penny of that donation goes to those who need it, checks are made payable directly to one of the inner-city missions. By doing this, Dave hopes to share a bit of his wealth with those less fortunate.
I feel that, that I have been blessed with a talent, as I feel that everybody is. And I have pretty much taken from that talent the biggest part of my life, you know. I make a living by it, and I enjoy it even aside from work, you know. And it's all been pretty much for my gain. And it was like, you know, it's time that you give some of this back. You know, turn it around and give it back.
When she first saw the illustrations of people she knew from Our Daily Bread, Sister Josanna was struck by the way Dave chose to depict these street souls.
I think what impressed me the most was that they showed people whom others might consider degenerate, degraded human beings in an extremely dignified and beautiful light.
They're there in that situation for different reasons. And I could be there myself one day. I would hope that someone would maybe just take a little bit of time to think beyond what they may have been thinking for the last few years, you know, that know these people are individuals, and the other thing is they have dignity too.
Perhaps through his gesture of caring for the homeless, Dave Curtis can teach each of us what Jesus meant when he said, "I was hungry and you fed me, thirsty and you gave me a drink. For when you did this for the least of my brothers, you did it for me."
It might be thought by some that seeing street souls is a depressing idea. But as we learned from the piece, that looking at those people, some people make misjudgments about the kind of people who are street souls. Strange, isn't it? There were some who looked at the crucifixion and never saw the resurrection.
Next week in Crosstalk, we'll discuss the ministry of being single,
And meet the man of many voices.
Mike Gallagher looks at popular movies,
And we'll meet guitarist Eric Law.
Thank you for sharing your Easter with us tonight, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
We sincerely hope that all the Easter mysteries will be verified in your life. Good night, and God bless you.
Good night.